If you're like many, you likely have the understanding that sugar is not something you should be consuming in large amounts. And likely that understanding is based on the fact that sugar contains a significant amount of calories. But with most people, that's about all they understand when it comes to the negative effects that sugar can have on your body. And therefore, it really doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. And many people just choose to ignore this whole idea of keeping sugar out of their diet. You see, if they're not concerned about the vanity of how they look or their body weight, they really don't see a reason why they should have to worry about sugar at all. And by doing so, they're setting themselves up to invite the #1 cause of disease into their lives. So this week, I'll be focusing in and sharing with you the real and true dangers associated with sugar and why eliminating sugar from your diet might just save your life. Let's dive in. Welcome to episode 23 of the LeRock Show, where I'm here to help you get your fitness back on track at any age and regardless of your current fitness level, so you can spend more quality time with your families, have a brighter outlook on life, and finally find the true joy that life has to offer. I'm your host, LeRock. I am thankful for having this wonderful gift of being alive, being healthy, and being happy, and being able to hang out with you again today. I hope you're having an awesome day too. And for those of you listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today, thanks for listening and thanks for helping me grow my audience. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching each week. Thanks for trusting in me as I share these little life lessons with you that have the potential to help you change your life and help prevent some unnecessary damage to your health and fitness in the process. And as always, I look forward to your comments and your feedback each week, as I'm always here to help you out. And yes, it's true. Each week, I take great effort in order to share with you what I believe is the #1 cause why people can't lose the weight, can't gain back their healthy bodies, and overall just keep failing at this whole weight loss thing. And that #1 thing is their psychology. Well, this week I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm gonna be focusing in on an aspect of nutrition. Specifically, I'm gonna be talking about sugar and the overall negative impact it can have on your overall health. And yes, there is a psychology aspect to sugar as well. And there's a reason why many of us, even though we know it's not good for us, maybe from a caloric standpoint, that we still allow it into our lives. So on a psychological level, we give it kind of a pass and we say, you know what, if that's all it's doing to me, if it's only some extra calories, then what harm can sugar do to me? So on a psychological level, that's kind of how a lot of people think about sugar. And that's the reason they're allowing it to wreak havoc on their health and fitness. And my hope for you after this episode is done, that you take every effort you can to eliminate or significantly reduce sugar from your own diet, because it has the potential to save your life. And if you haven't done so already, please take advantage and download my free Automate Your Plate checklist. Automate Your Plate is an eating approach that I developed more than 15 years ago. I used it to lose 65 pounds in 13 weeks, and I've maintained a very healthy body ever since. Automate Your Plate is one of the 9 directives that I talk about in my book and that I teach in my online course. The benefits of this eating approach are many. One of which is it allows you much control of what you put on your plate. It doesn't require that you starve yourself, and it allows you to stay fueled and satisfied on a continual basis. Now, those that have tried Automate Your Plate and done it correctly have had great results. I'm a 52-year-old fitness enthusiast, online coach, and author. I also work full-time. I have an extremely busy schedule. Yet, while following this Automate Your Plate eating approach, as well as the other 8 directives that I teach in my book and online course, I've managed to maintain my weight loss with very little effort at all. So yes, I put together a free Automate Your Plate checklist that you can download today and begin using it as your very own quick start guide for automating your plate. And it's as simple as downloading it. You can begin using it today and benefiting from it right away. So be sure to grab your own copy today. For those of you listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can go to ethanlerock.com/automate. And if you're watching on YouTube, I provided a link down below and you can get it there. All right, now let's get into it. We're going to be talking about some real important and critical things today relating to sugar. I don't know if you're like me, but my understanding of sugar for a very long time in my life was that sugar was something we should avoid. I knew that. And the reason for that was because it was high in calories. And it's basically in all the foods that are out there that are being shoveled our way. It's not good for us. And the main reason they give us for that is because it is high in calories. But that's about as far as I thought when it came to sugar. I didn't think much else about it besides maybe that it might spike your energy levels and then with a quick crash that follows soon after. But those were really the two things that I thought about when it came to sugar in my diet. So if you're like I was and you're trying to lose weight, the only real importance that you put on it was, if I want to lose weight quickly, I should keep sugar low, and therefore I should have less calories to burn. The problem with that is on a psychological level, that might just not be enough excuse or enough reason to convince us to start getting sugar out of our lives. It's only relating to our weight loss or our vanity. And I'm going to be honest and transparent with you today. This is a belief and an understanding that I had for a very long time. But other than the excessive calories or the spikes in energy, I didn't really see any dangers in sugar. So I allowed it to kind of sneak into my diet on a regular basis. And with what I've learned since and looking back, it totally makes sense why I had a hard time keeping the weight off. Why I would constantly be on this roller coaster ride of gaining weight and losing weight and gaining weight and losing weight on a continual basis, and never being able to quite take control of the whole thing and keeping myself stable in the process. The other thing that's really clear is, since I have reduced sugar in my diet a number of years ago, almost 15 years ago now, it makes total sense why I've been able to maintain a very healthy body and lifestyle ever since. So today I will be doing something a little more advanced. I will be teaching you some science, and I'm going to try my best not to make it boring like, when you're in school, but something a little bit more that really does, hits home and allows you to really absorb the information and learn from it. So I encourage you to grab a journal or a piece of paper and a pen and be ready to write some things down. Because this isn't a podcast format and I'm going to be teaching science, you really are going to want to take some notes and just the key things that I present. Because I find the more that when I write things down and I focus, for some reason it connects more with me on a mental level. I retain it better and I put more importance on it. So that's why I'm encouraging you to do the same thing. It all relates to our psychology. And in all seriousness, today's lesson not only has the potential to help you lose weight, gain muscle, have a better life, but also has the potential to save your life in the process. And if you share it with others, it has the potential to save their lives too. Okay, the first thing that helped me to understand the dangers of sugar and why it's so important to keep it out of my diet is when I was researching the #1 disease in the world that kills people today. It's 3 times more deadly than cancer. The scary thing is, many of us have it and don't even know it. This seemingly untalked about disease causes a myriad of mechanics to take place in our bodies. Now, in order to ensure that you get the best and most accurate information, I'm going to be referring to my computer screen just to the left of the camera. This disease causes fatty liver disease. It's a cause of it. It causes chronic inflammation. It increases our blood pressure. It increases our blood sugar. It reduces the good cholesterol, HDL. It increases the bad cholesterol, LDL. It increases the triglycerides, the fat that's in our blood. It increases belly fat. It makes us gain weight. It reduces immune function, and it shuts off autophagy, our body's mechanism to clear itself and recycle itself. On top of that, it contributes to cardiovascular disease, heart disease. It causes stroke. It causes dementia. It's a leading cause of kidney failure, blindness, and amputations. It further contributes to cancer. It interferes with the body's ability to defend itself and our immune system. It increases the risk of death from infections. And in addition, it's 95% responsible for all of the degenerative diseases that are out there today. And you may be asking yourself, why haven't I heard of this disease? That's the exact question that I pose to the people out there, the medical professionals out there that aren't speaking about it enough. And this disease is called insulin resistance. Now, many of you may not have heard of insulin resistance, or you might know what it is. And some of you may be saying, what big deal? Insulin resistance? How can that be the number one most devastating thing in the world? Isn't it cancer? Isn't it diabetes? Isn't it stroke? Isn't it all these other diseases out there? Are you sure that it's insulin resistance that's the number one problem that we should be worrying about? Well, I understand that. It only makes sense because nobody's really providing education on what insulin resistance is. Insulin resistance is one of the most devastating diseases there is. It's one of the most costly diseases that there are out there. Insulin resistance causes you to die longer. It's a long, drawn-out process. But once you're caught up in it, it's very hard to get out of it. And when you are caught up in it, it causes you to suffer more. It causes it to be prolonged. It gives you a poor quality of life. It puts you in a terrible mood. It makes you less productive. And it causes more other disease than any other disease in the world. Now, I have some figures that I can share with you that'll kind of give you the idea of why I'm saying it's 3 times more deadly than cancer. Cancer kills roughly 9.5 million people every year worldwide. Now, other diseases out there, heart disease kills 17.9 million. Hypertension kills 7.5 million. Stroke kills 5 million. Diabetes kills 4.2 million people per year. That's a total of 34.6 million people that are killed by heart disease, hypertension, stroke, and diabetes. Cancer is 9.5 million. So that's 364% more people are killed by these other diseases. And the central mechanism that causes those other diseases is insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. So I hope I haven't lost you talking to you a little bit about science, using some of these scientific words. Because I know the goal of my channel is to keep things real simple, make things as simple as possible so people don't have to worry about them so much and can just implement simple little things into their lives. But it's very important that you pay attention today as I'm taking you through this science of insulin resistance and why it's such a terrible disease. Because if I just tell you to do something without showing you the why, and I don't take you through the process, then what I find is you're going to be very unlikely to give it the attention and importance that you should be giving it. So the very first thing I need to share with you when it comes to insulin resistance is I need to kind of talk to you about what insulin is and what it does. And I'm going to do my best to do this. This is a podcast. So I'm going to do my best to talk you through it in the most simple terms so that you can absorb it, whether you're listening to it or whether you're watching me on YouTube. And again, I encourage you to write some of this stuff down because then you can come back to it, reflect on it, and it'll help remind you of what to avoid and what to bring into your nutrition plan. So the way insulin works is we eat food. Food is consumed and then it goes into our digestive tract. Goes into our digestive tract and it gets broken down into nutrients. Those nutrients go into our blood. Okay, so that's the third step. It goes into our blood. But what happens next is insulin is triggered and it helps take the nutrients that are inside our blood and get those nutrients into our cells. And that's basically what insulin does. That's the purpose of insulin. So insulin is not a bad thing. It's part of this wonderful body that God has given us, this wonderful thing that has been created, highly adaptive. And insulin is all part of that. The key thing is it has to be in balance. So like I shared, insulin helps to get the nutrients transferred into the cells, our muscle, our tissue, our liver, okay? And that's its job. Its job is to shuttle those nutrients into the cells. So when we become insulin resistant, our cells no longer want to accept what insulin's bringing in, these nutrients that are coming in. And there's a reason for that. You know, you may be asking yourself when you're listening to me, well, why would the cells not want to bring in the nutrients? They need the nutrients. So why would they be resisting insulin? So what I'm going to share with you is a little analogy that may help you kind of understand why insulin resistance starts and why it takes place and why the cells actually do this. If I were to come to your house, or somebody was to come to your house and knock on your front door and try to sell you like an aeration service, we want to work on your property, work on your lawn. Would you be interested today in having your lawn aerated? We've all had that awful, knock on the door. And if you're a person who actually was looking to have your lawn aerated and it's like just a coincidence and you've been wondering, you want to bring, your lawn up and make it more green and lush, well, then you might be kind of excited about that. You might ask a few questions to the salesman at your door. You might kind of talk about price. And then if it's at the price you want, then you might say, you know what? Thank you. Yeah, I'll do that. Can you please take care of that? And that's kind of a normal thing. It's a person coming to your front door, knocking, selling you on some sort of idea, the idea of having your lawn aerated. And then you're happy with the transaction and you're willing to accept the transaction. Well, the problem, the way insulin resistance works, is it's like that same salesman comes to your door tomorrow and says, hey, I noticed that your lawn's still not quite green. Would you be interested in having, some weed and feed done on your yard? And by now you're scratching your head thinking, you know what, I just shelled out a bunch of money to this person yesterday. Why is he back again today? What's the deal with that? And you may or may not be receptive to that sales call that you get that day. Well, then think again if this happened the next day. And instead of that, the person came to your door, he knocked, he had a friend with him, and he's saying, you know what? We noticed that your property kind of doesn't look as nice as some of the properties in the neighborhood, and we'd like to sell you some landscaping service. Would you be interested? And by that point, you're thinking to yourself, well, I really didn't ask for any of this. Why am I being bombarded by these salespeople? Well, imagine if the next day the guy comes back and has another person with him and they're trying to sell you a new roof for your house. And they just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. What would your response be to those salespeople that keep coming to your front door? Eventually you would say, enough's enough. I've had enough. Well, that's exactly what happens with insulin resistance. The cell keeps getting bombarded by excessive insulin, and eventually it says, enough's enough. I don't want any more insulin coming my way. And it starts to resist the natural process of insulin and what it does. And when insulin resistance takes place and starts to happen in your body, it no longer accepts insulin and it turns it away. And what do you think happens with that? Well, all that energy that didn't get into your cells, it gets stored as body fat. Now, on a scientific level, and I don't want to kill you with scientific terms, but that's what's called a physiological adaptation. The cell no longer accepts insulin. The cell is trying to return to balance and homeostasis. So many of us have been taught about what causes fat in the body. Okay? We're going to talk about this for a minute. We're taught that people get fat because they eat excessive calories, they eat excessive amounts of sugar and fat, and whatever other calories that there are out there. But there's more to it. There's more truth to what I'm about to share with you. The way fat is created in the body, and the reason we store it, okay, as body fat, it's when we eat sugar and starch. Okay, sugars and starch is where it all starts. Those sugars and starches are converted into blood sugar. Then what happens is insulin gets triggered, like we just talked about. And the insulin gets triggered in high quantities because we're eating a lot of sugars and starches. And eventually, the cells become insulin resistant. We just talked about that. And what happens next is there's an increase in lipogenesis. And lipogenesis is a scientific term that just means making fat. So with that comes an increase of fat storage and a decrease in our metabolism. So how do we know that starch and sugar have such a large insulin response? Well, the answer there is science. Starch and sugar have an index of, let's say, 100, okay? Protein has an index of 50, so half that of starch and sugar. And fat, surprisingly to many, has almost no effect on insulin. It's in the single digits. Furthermore, fat and protein keep you satisfied and satiated for a longer period of time, where carbohydrates and sugars make you hungry almost immediately after you consume them. So why is this information important, and why don't we know about it? If you do some research and you look into different places online, the World Health Organization, for example, they will teach you things about the causes of obesity and the main contributors to obesity. And in their opinion and what they teach us, and it's not only them, by the way, it's a lot of the authorities out there. It's the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, and many others. And we are taught that obesity is caused by high levels of fat, high levels of sugar, and less mobility, less activity. And unfortunately, that information is only about 50% right. You see, it's not the fat that's causing insulin resistance. It's the high levels of sugar that's in our diet today. And the almost scary and almost humorous, if it wasn't true, fact is that the WHO recommends that we introduce grains, fruits, vegetables, and beans into our diets in order to get out of a state of obesity. Now, non-starchy, leafy vegetables, for sure, you can't go wrong there. That is correct. But what they're telling us to do when they're asking us to increase our consumption of fruit, vegetables, beans, and grains is they're asking us to eat more carbohydrates, 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 and carbohydrates. And that is exactly how we go from insulin resistance to diabetes. So if you need a little more evidence to convince you why some of these associations and organizations out there are incorrect in what they're telling us, just step back and look at the costs that we've been incurring in our healthcare system today. In the US alone, the healthcare costs of last year were greater than $4 trillion. That's trillion. That's $12,000 per person in the USA that has gone to healthcare and healthcare costs associated with these terrible diseases. Yet, diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, all these things are on the rise. So why hasn't all this money solved the problem? Why are all these diseases on the rise? It's because what they're teaching us is only to address the symptoms of the problem. They are not teaching us how to treat the root cause. There is no benefit for these big pharmaceutical companies if we get our act together and learn how to treat the root cause of the problem. They lose out in profits. And these companies have big money. And they spend that big money on these organizations through donations to their charities, etc. That information you're getting many times is biased. And I'm not talking conspiracies here. I'm just talking about doing your due diligence when you're investigating things when it comes to your nutrition and many things in life. Don't take everything that you hear or learn at face value. Do some investigating on your own. So before we get to the end, I'm going to share with you one other disease that is extremely affected by insulin resistance. It's this recent disease that everybody's talking about called the coronavirus. Yep, the coronavirus. People that have a higher risk for death from the coronavirus are those that are elderly and that have a myriad of these things that are caused by insulin resistance, diabetes, and all these other things, right? People with predetermined issues. Well, the number one reason why age is an issue is because people that are elderly, a lot of them have this issue of being insulin resistant and having these other diseases. So when they say that you have a low risk or a high risk of having issues with the coronavirus, those with the highest risk are 100 times more likely to die from the coronavirus. And why is that? Because pathogens take advantage of a weakened immune system. A weakened immune system is caused by insulin resistance. Now, I hope I didn't bore you to death with all this science and these science terminologies, but I wanted to take the time today to share this information with you on a scientific level and also on a common sense level so that you can understand it, so you can absorb it and understand the importance of keeping these high sugar foods out of your nutrition. So I'm gonna take a step back from being the science teacher today, and I'm gonna make it real simple for you. Real simple. And I want you to write this down for yourself and to share it with anybody you can. There are 3 real simple things that you can do. When it comes to weight loss and when it comes to your overall health, I want you not to focus on calories, but I want you to focus on insulin, preventing insulin spikes. And how do you do that? You eat real food. You eat food that they sell at the grocery store, whether it be produce, whether it be meat, whatever it might be, things that aren't in a box, that haven't been processed, that haven't had preservatives added to them, that haven't been injected with different sugars to make you addicted. You need to really focus on eating real food. And the third thing, it relates to eating real food. It relates to number 2, is don't eat food that isn't real. Don't eat foods that are packaged, processed, full of preservatives, full of starches that are added. Avoid those things. If you can remember those 3 things alone, then you're gonna have a real good time with your health and nutrition. If you can remember those 3 simple things alone, focus on insulin, not calories, eat real food, and avoid processed foods, avoid unreal food, food that almost tastes real, but it's all fake. It's pumped with all these horrible fillers. If you can remember to do that in your own diet, you will prevent insulin resistance. You will prevent a myriad of diseases that relate to insulin resistance. You will prevent this disease that is 3 times more deadly than cancer. And not only will you look better, not only will you feel better, not only will you shed some weight and be more attractive, but you will potentially live longer in the process. And that is exactly what I want for you. Now, I know that was a lot of information today to share, but it is some of the most important information that I've shared with you to date. Now, if you truly took the time to write some of these things down, it has the potential to change your perception. And when you change your perception, that has the strongest potential for you to change your life. And before we go, I'm not going to leave you high and dry. As I shared with you earlier, you can download your very own copy of my Automate Your Plate checklist. It's based on a nutrition approach that I created more than 15 years ago. It automatically keeps your sugar levels down. It's had that baked into it all along. The checklist takes everything that I teach on this directive in my book and in my online course, and it simplifies it all down into a single page cheat sheet that you can begin using today for automating your plate. It's literally a paint by numbers approach that takes you through the entire process of automating your plate so that you can begin doing it as quickly as possible. It's as simple as download it, print it, start following each of the steps in sequence, and you'll be automating your plate in no time. Just go to ethanlerock.com/automate. That's ethanlerock.com/automate, and you can get it there. And if you're watching on YouTube, there is a link down below. You can click on it and you can download it right away. And before we go, I'm curious. Before watching this video, did you have any idea of what insulin resistance was? Did you understand how insulin works in the body? Because I'm curious. I'm always curious what you think and the feedback that you have. Did you think that sugar was only a calorie issue? Did you know that it was so dangerous? I'm continuously curious about your opinion on all these things that relate to health and nutrition and what your take is on this particular subject. And if you could do one thing for me today after watching this video, is to take it seriously. Start making some small adjustments in your own nutrition approach, the way that you eat. Get sugar out of your diet. Get processed foods out of your diet as much as possible. Find ways to get delicious, unprocessed foods into your diet. Foods that you can enjoy, foods that will keep you satisfied. And even just as importantly, share this video with someone you love, someone that you know can use the help, maybe someone who's been looking for an answer or struggling with their weight. Because that's why I'm here every week. I want to help as many people as I possibly can to lose weight, to keep it off for a lifetime, to have a lifetime of health and happiness so that they don't have to struggle in life the way I did at one time. This episode may have just contained the exact information that can save your life and save the life of others that you care about. Now have a blessed remainder of the week, and until we meet again, stay healthy, be happy, and live your life with intention every single day.